Chapter 10-4 of the Federalist Era, we're going to take a look at John Adams' presidency. And the title is Troubled Times for John Adams. We're going to see some difficulties during his presidency. First of all, the XYZ affair. Be able to describe or explain the events leading to. So what were the causes? What started the XYZ affair? What were some issues in the United States before the XYZ and then after the XYZ affair? So what caused it and what were the effects of the XYZ affair? Why did the Federalists lose power during Adams' presidency? So when we're talking about losing power, the Federalists, we learn, are a political party. What power did they lose? You'd need to know in the first place. Okay, and why did they lose power? And it has something to do with the XYZ affair. What government policies did the Federalists use to keep the Democratic Republicans out of power? So what things did they try to prevent the Democratic Republican Party from gaining the power that the Federalists lost? And why was it necessary to add an amendment in addition to the Constitution? Okay, and again, if you're looking at an amendment, that's something that you add to the Constitution after the election of 1800. Okay. Starting off, we go back to the war between France and Great Britain. Again, at this time, France had just got done with this revolution, started the French Republic, and that caused a war between France and Great Britain, and also France and pretty much the rest of the European countries. They were unhappy with the deal that we made with Great Britain to protect trade between Great Britain and the United States. So the French wanted to be able to work out their own deal as well. Okay. And one way they tried to encourage us or kind of play their cards to try to get a deal with us is to also start attacking trading ships and cargo ships that were going to Great Britain. You know, so just like the Great Britain was attacking ships going to France, they started attacking trading ships going to Great Britain from the United States. And this caused several people to be very upset at the French, and anti-French feelings were increasing. To avoid war, to avoid this idea of going to war with another European country like Washington warned not to do, Adams sends John Marshall, Charles Pinckney, and Elbridge Gerry to Paris, France to try to work out a deal, to work out a peace treaty. Well, instead, the French send 3 representatives who get the name XYZ, and they tell the United States that you need to give France $250,000 or we are going to stop trading with the United States and keep attacking your ships. Now again, this, forcing the United States to pay $250,000, the United States obviously was not going to be bullied and pushed around. So they refused. Okay. This bribe became known as the XYZ affair. Okay. And when these 3 officials came back to the United States and this XYZ affair and news of this bribe became public, people in the United States were furious. They were very upset. And what does the result of it cause? The United States increases the size of its army and its navy. Okay. Again, our economy has been growing. We've gained a little bit more control of our national debt. We do now have some money to invest into our army and navy. Okay. And it helps us grow our army and navy. The XYZ affair, the result of the XYZ affair is the growth of our army and navy. Now, we do not go to war because of a man named Napoleon Bonaparte, who came to power in France. He was a French dictator who used his leadership in the military to gain control of France. And he shifts his focus at this time away from the United States, and because he wants to gain control of Europe. As you can see on this map here, France gains a significant portion of Europe during Napoleon's rule. Okay. And again, he's more concerned about being victorious in battles in France. He's having to fight the British, and also his goal is to try to take Russia. And that's where he fails, and is why France is not the size of Europe today, that it is still what it was in 1799. But again, Napoleon's concern and focus was to try to take over Europe. The areas in green here were current France, pre-1799. Napoleon takes power, gains areas in purple, and also gains alliances with the areas in orange. Okay. Like I said, eventually he's going to try to take Russia, and the cold Russian winters will cause him to be defeated, and basically leads to Napoleon losing control, losing power, and France going back to basically the size that it is today. Now, another issue, though, with Napoleon is that we made a peace agreement with France. Okay, once Napoleon took power, that peace deal divided the Federalists. Some Federalists supported the peace deal. Other Federalists did not support the peace deal, and that caused John Adams and the Federalists to lose control of the government. As the Federalists lost power in government, the Democratic-Republican party's influence was growing. They were gaining the support of a larger population of the country, especially new immigrants, people who were coming from other countries. The Democratic Republicans were gaining their support. And the Federalists saw this happening. They saw that they were losing control of the government, that less people were supporting their views, less of their representatives were being voted into government. And so the Federalists tried to do something about this. And they passed in 1798 in the Congress the Alien and Sedition Acts. Three of the laws are known as the Alien Acts. The Alien Acts were passed to supposedly protect the United States from foreign immigrants that were considered threats or considered dangerous. They allowed the president to deport any alien considered dangerous out of the country. Now, this is is not a good thing for the United States to have allowed, because it didn't specifically state what the reasoning that they could be deported was for. Also, it made it difficult for citizens to be an alien or a new immigrant to become a citizen. It went from 5 years to 14 years, which forced the immigrants to have to wait in the United States longer, right? Preventing them from voting and making it a lot longer before they could vote. And again, these laws were trying to stop immigrants from voting for the Democratic Republicans. Okay, so again, these are some of the examples that we talked about there with the Alien Act of 1798. It really wasn't to protect us from immigrants coming into the United States. It was more just to stop them from voting for Democratic Republicans. The other one was the Sedition Act. And basically, this was to try. This act was making it a crime to speak out against the government. Okay, to have an opinion against the government, that to say that what the government or the president or Congress are doing is wrong. They made that a crime. Now, so if anyone was found guilty, they could be fined or they could be sent to prison. Okay, again, it was mainly aimed at those new newspapers created by the Democratic Republicans. This act was completely illegal. It went against the Bill of Rights in your First Amendment of free speech. And like I said, this was something that the government tried to take away people's rights. Okay. Again, if you want to, think about it from some memes, think about we must never question the government. Said no founding father ever. But that's what this Sedition Act was. It violated the First Amendment to that Constitution. Your First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. Okay, so how do you challenge this? Well, the Democratic Republicans tried to challenge it based on the theory of state rights. So states like Kentucky and Virginia passed resolutions or laws in their states saying that they were not going to have to follow these laws, that they could ignore these laws. They felt that they had the right to nullify or not follow a national law. An individual state, taking a stance against a national law. Right? And that was one of the first times that this was challenged. And this is a question that's going to be brought up later on in U.S. history. Okay. And this Sedition Act and the Alien Acts are not addressed. Right? They do not go to the Supreme Court. But we will see that these laws are going to be repealed later, because as John Adams loses support, the Democratic Republican leader Thomas Jefferson is going to gain it. And in many people's minds, Jefferson stood for more liberty, less government. As a result, the election of 1800s goes for the side of the Democratic Republicans. Now, this time, members of the Electoral College would vote for two candidates from the same political party, not two candidates. Right? They had to be from the same political party. But when they voted, again, with the majority of the support going this time shifting towards the Democratic Republicans, both Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, because they were from the same political party, got the same number of electoral votes. If you look at here, how the states voted, okay, and where the electoral votes went, both Jefferson and Burr got the same number of votes. Now, according to the Constitution, one's supposed to be president, one's supposed to be vice president. But since it was a tie, it went to the House of Representatives to decide who became president. Now, Alexander Hamilton, a strong Federalist, hated Aaron Burr. He absolutely despised him. They had, and this conflict you will see later on will lead to Hamilton's death. Okay, in a famous duel where Burr kills Hamilton. But he convinces the House of Representatives to select Thomas Jefferson as president and not Aaron Burr. Because of this tie and because of this conflict of Jefferson and Burr being on the same vote and getting a tie and forcing the House of Representatives to decide who would be president, we create the 12th Amendment, which requires that the president and the vice president be on separate ballots for the national election. Okay. So again, Jefferson becomes president, Aaron Burr becomes vice president. After the election, you never hear of the Federalist Party again. They lose power and lose influence in the United States. Before they do leave, one accomplishment would be the creation of the Washington, D.C., planned by architect Charles Allen Font. Okay. Now, one other thing is you think back to our elections this year and how bitter and maybe some people call it a ugly election. Differences and arguments between political parties started in the beginning. Okay, we're going to watch a little clip here of a video. These are direct quotes, actual quotes said by each side.
John Adams is a blind, bald, crippled, toothless man who wants to start a war with France. While he's not busy importing mistresses from Europe, he's trying to marry one of his sons to a daughter of King George. Haven't we had enough monarchy in America? I'm Thomas Jefferson, and I approve this message because John Adams is a hideous, hermaphroditical character with neither the force and firmness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. If Thomas Jefferson wins, murder, robbery, rape, adultery, and incest will be openly taught and practiced. The air will be rent with the cries of the distressed, the soil will be soaked with blood, and the nation black with crimes. Are you prepared to see your dwellings in flames, female chastity violated, children writhing on a pike?
I'm John Adams, and I approve this message because Jefferson is the son of a half-breed Indian squaw raised on hoe cakes, and Hamilton is a Creole bastard brat of a Scotch peddler.
So again, you can see the harshness of some of your early elections and the differences in opinions of political parties. All right. This concludes Chapter 10. We'll get prepared for Chapter 11 next week.